guys, today's video topic is the fetishization of youth, which might seem like a bit of an unusual topic, but I just feel that in the modern age we're very much overly invested in youth, and I am no longer as young as I used to be, and this happens to everybody. Aging is an absolute privilege, and we get to go through life hopefully aging and learning our lessons and experiencing all the good things that life has to offer as we progress through it, and as we age. So I thought this would be an interesting topic because it's kind of a complex cultural, psychological and economic phenomenon, isn't it? And what do I mean by fetishizing youth? We are super fascinated with youngness. We want to look young. We want to physically replicate our younger versions of ourselves. And again, I think this is all linked to the physicality. And I was thinking about this the other day. So I grew up in the late 90s, early noughties. I became an adult around this time, a late teen, early adult. So I'm like a typical millennial, your archetype almost. And I was thinking about pop artists. I was thinking about music industry of this era. And I was thinking about people like Britney Spears, who was a pop artist at 16, Christina Aguilera, who was a pop artist at 17, Nick Carter, who joined the Backstreet Boys, I think at 11, so that was really young, but kind of was famous again, or when the Backstreet Boys were at the sort of height of their fame around about the age of like 15, 16, 17, 18. His younger brother, Aaron Carter, who sadly ended up, I believe, ending his life because of the exploitation that he'd sort of experienced. Mandy Moore, Billy Piper, a lot of these bands and these musicians, and granted, they were pop artists. I'm not talking about your indie bands here, and I'm not talking about, your singer-songwriters particularly, but they were all teenagers, and they were all kind of, there was a lot of sexual objectification going on with these people, and it wasn't always great. And, we can sort of see the errors of what was happening in this era and how they've kind of manifested as, adults and the problems that they've had, sort of transitioning and being allowed to grow old. And then think about Disney stars as well. Think about people like Miley Cyrus, Selena Gomez, these people that kind of are growing older now, but were famous and at the height of their fame in their late teens and early 20s. And there's another thing. I was on social media and I saw a video that was really coolly called "Celebrities Who Are No Longer Famous but Think They Are." And there was Fergie from the Black Eyed Peas, there was Jennifer Lopez, there was Katy Perry. They're the only two I can remember off the top of my head. But this video was predominantly aimed at women that were actually accredited, talented people. I mean, let's face it, Katy Perry is a bit controversial at the moment, isn't she? I mean, she's kind of having a bit of a difficult time of it. And maybe not, but she is a singer-songwriter. She can sing. She wrote her own songs. She plays guitar. She is an accredited, deserving of her fame, has earned her stripes in the music industry. The same for Jennifer Lopez. While she might not naturally be the best singer, in my opinion, and I doubt she wrote her own songs, she is a phenomenal dancer. She is a businesswoman. She can act. She can perform. She certainly, put a lot of herself out there and contributed creatively. But the thing that got me is that it was both sexist and ageist. And I was thinking, who made this video? Who made this video that was critiquing these women that, were part of the music industry? Fergie from the Black Eyed Peas has a powerful, strong voice. She has had a family. She has written songs. She has performed. These are women that were maybe famous 15, 20 years ago, but they are still famous to people my age, people who are not 21. And I was thinking, who made this video? Was it somebody in their mid-20s who was like looking at these old women and just lashing out at them? Is it some man? Because I imagine it was a man, because interestingly, like Justin Timberlake didn't feature in that video, you know, of celebrities that still think they're famous and they're not, even though he could probably be put in that category, couldn't he? I mean, he is a talented singer. I mean, recently he's had that dodgy kind of performance, and we've learned that he's been struggling with Lyme disease and all that jazz. But, you know, he could have been put in that group, but he wasn't. He wasn't put in there because it's women. It's women growing older that we struggle with. Men age like a fine wine. He's a silver fox. You know, he's like, you know, a daddy. He's a DILF. You know, we get like men are allowed to age and women are not. Or if we are, we're told like, oh, you look good for your age. No, I look good regardless of my age is really what we should be saying. And it doesn't matter how old you are, you still have things to contribute. And we often see like those clips, don't we? Like Vera Wang didn't start designing wedding dresses till she was in her 40s. Helen Mirren's career really took off, you know, when she was in Prime Suspect again in her 40s, 50s. You know, we like older people. There's a lot we can learn from older people. I love that there's a generation or two above me that are, you know, sort of able to share knowledge, information, and, you know, kind of give me guidance and advice as I go on my life journey. I mean, I'm not undervaluing the young people's experience here, and I bet this makes me sound so old, but damn, my 20s were frustrating. I didn't have a freaking clue. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do. I wasn't really sure of who I was. I wasn't sure of even what I liked. There was a lot of expectation. There was a lot of pressure. And I think one of the key things when I get at this, and linking back to my point about these young people being pop stars and being everywhere in the sort of late 90s, early noughties, is actually there's a degree of power and manipulation linked to this. Young people can be manipulated. Young people don't have the autonomy and agency that maybe older people do. And in this interesting era of social media where we're putting these big ideas out here, where we're learning to navigate through, you know, this content, this information, these messages, these kind of, you know, testaments of lived experience that we're putting out there in this big social experiment that is social media, we actually now are probably being exposed to older voices. So I'm just going to do a deep dive on this, and we will sort of go into it a little bit more and sort of talk about the foundations and the structures of why we fetishize youth. So first of all, what do I mean by this? Fetishization is that we're kind of meaning we're obsessed with it, and that we value it and we desire it and we covet it. We want it kind of, you know, and there's a lot of reasons why we do this. And I think it's because we're so busy looking backwards that we forget to look forwards. So we're going to deep dive, we're going to get into it, and we'll think about the big ideas that underpin this. So one of the first things that we need to think about here is the evolutionary and biological roots of this, because this is an important thing. It is often better to do certain things when you are physically in your prime. And being physically in your prime does tend to be when you are younger, or traditionally when you were younger. So from an evolutionary standpoint, you know, youth is associated with fertility, health, genetic vitality. And because of this, we start to idealize it. You know, being a mother in your 20s is probably when you're at your peak physical fitness, but actually in the modern era, in the 21st century, in the 2020s, at being an older mother might be better because you have more knowledge and insight and more guidance than maybe you do as someone who was 21, 22. I mean, this is not me being ageist. This is just, you know, a thought bomb. And please feel free to put your viewpoints in there, and you can be a young mum and be a phenomenally great mum. You can be an older mum and be absolutely out of sync and terrible at it. I'm not saying that. But, you know, physically, your 20s are probably going to be the biological standpoint. But then there's also that myth, isn't it, that older women can't have kids and it's more difficult, the biological clock's ticking. And again, this kind of channels into that. I mean, biologically, the fact is that I think as you get older, it can be more difficult to conceive a child. I believe that to be true. However, equally, when women go through perimenopause in their early 40s, the eggs start coming thick and fast, and there's a lot of women who end up having multiple, children, or more likely to get twins and triplets because the ovaries are going crazy because they know that they're under the procedure of being able to have or biologically conceive easily. So actually, we do need to think about that kind of perspective as well. And young people have a lot more energy and adaptability, don't they? They're more willing to go with things. Time is on your side. I mean, to be fair, no one ever really knows how much time they have, do they? Anyone can die at any point, due to accident or illness. You could, die at 19, you could die at 99. Nobody knows this. When the end is the end. But generally, people who are younger tend to have more energy. They're stronger, quicker to heal, and more chance of thriving. So biology does play a part in this to some extent, and therefore there's a lot more energy and there's a lot more physicality. However, it's interesting to also counterbalance this with the fact that I don't think we become mature until our 30s. I certainly didn't. There's a lot of conversation about how the prefrontal, cortex or the frontal lobes don't develop until you're 25. And I work with teenagers, I work with young people, and some of them have some really insightful comments, some of them have maturity, but you can equally still tell that they are not quite at their adult firing on all cylinders capabilities, because there are aspects that they just can't handle, things that they can't do yet because they're not developmentally there in terms of that cognitive capability. And I think, yeah, actually, I didn't feel, and again, I'm talking about my own experience. You might have different things. Our lives are shaped by how we've lived them, and our contexts bring a lot of information to how we are as people. But, it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I got my shizzle together. It wasn't until recently that I really felt like the grown up. Maybe that's because I'm a parent and I have to look after other people, and I really do need to have that. But I still have a fun, playful, youthful side to me, even though I am no longer in my 20s. Then there are cultural narratives. I love this phrase. I love that we shape our own experience through storytelling, don't we? Human beings constantly, our whole world is shaped on our kind of way of reinterpreting it and the stories that we kind of tell within it. So we romanticize beginnings. The start of something is great. We don't always want to think about the end. And we can also look back on golden eras, can't we? We love fresh starts. We love first love, untapped potential, the beginnings of things, the freshness, the newness. All of this is associated with love. But think about media as well, and we'll tap into that a little bit more. We don't always get older stories. When you watch a lot of rom-coms, it's how people meet and how people are together and how they come together. We don't often get lots of storytelling about established, long-standing couples or people that have pursued difficulty and still endured within those relationships. So again, first loves and first experiences tend to be really positively desired. And there's nothing wrong with that, but maybe we need to be exploring some other stories and older perspectives and older viewpoints. And there's also this idea of the endless possibility, or the myth of the endless possibility. The world is ahead of you at 21, 22, 25, 30. I mean, I've still got a lot of time ahead of me now. In fact, we've always got time ahead of us until we die. There is something potentially yet for us to experience or to come. But this idea that it's untapped and there's a lot of possibility. And as we go through life, certain things anchor you a little bit more. You become established in your job. You're not willing to move around because you get comfortable. You buy that house and you have that mortgage. You have those kids and you want to live in the same area. You're not going to travel all the world around with them because you want them to have friendships and support and family connections and stuff. So sometimes the context of our lives kind of make us more sedentary and slow down, and that, ability just to fly off and move elsewhere or to do different things, we don't want to do that quite so much as we get older. And I suppose that taps into that previous point about energy and adaptability, doesn't it? Maybe as well, there is the fear of what happens when we are here no more, the fear of mortality. One universal truth is that we're all going to die. Equally, we were all born, there's two universal truths there. And no one ever worries about where they were before they existed, before they were born, but we always worry about where we'll go afterwards. And I kind of think that's an interesting concept. And I find that quite comforting, that like I didn't worry about who I was or where I was before I existed. So should I really worry about who I will be or where I'll go after I've existed? I mean, energy is neither created nor destroyed. So will I just be recycled and rehashed? I don't know. That's a completely different point. But, we do kind of struggle with aging and past glories. And, as our body physically changes and ages, we just don't respect and revere the age, the wisdom, the experience that maybe comes with getting older. I mean, aging is a privilege, and we should really be grateful for that, and all the wonderful things that come along with it. So that's certainly another topic to think about within this discussion about why we fetishize youth. And then obviously the one that intersects everything is media and pop culture, which kind of links back to the first part of the video. I was talking about these pop stars, beauty standards. Even as this, I've always had this idea that if I were to make a magazine, would I put real people in there? I think I would. Would I show the wrinkles? Would I show the the flaws like of somebody, the crepey skin, the greys in our hair, things like that? I think, yeah, why not? Because we're not really exposed to older people that much. And is it the film, is it Logan's Run? I don't know, can't remember. But was it where after the age of 35, they get chucked into a big pit and they die, and no one's allowed to age, and nobody knows what old people look like? And yeah, do we want to end up in a society where we all end up looking the same? I mean, it's already starting to happen, isn't it? With the fillers and the Botox and the pulled up faces. And you know what? You do that. You do you. But equally, what's wrong with a wrinkle? Is there a problem with that? What is wrong with your face sagging a little bit? Is it a problem? Is it something we're taught to fear? And doesn't that intersect with a cosmetic industry that makes money from this fear? So again, this idea of media and pop culture, having people that actually look like older people. Models are often in their teens and early 20s. They have bright eyes and beautiful complexions. I mean, this whole like glass skin and this idea of looking young and energized and vibrant and slim bodies and bright energy. That's exactly what we're all looking at. And they are marketed as ideals. And even though representations of people are these perfect idealizations of them, we don't get these often real sort of stereotypes. And I think a lot of the media places a lot of power and emphasis on young people and their views, and implying that older people are less interesting and less capable or less current. But do you want to be current? Do I really? I mean, I am not interested in anything that particularly 20-year-olds find interesting, and that's as it should be, because wouldn't I be a bit of a loser if I was trying to do things that 20-year-olds were trying to do? And I work with some great people in their 20s, and I love that they're sort of living their lives and doing them, but if I'm trying to do the same things that they're doing, it's a little bit sad. And to be fair, my versions of having fun are based on the things that I enjoyed doing maybe when I was young to some extent, but also different things now. We often joke about, like, my generation want to be in bed by 9 o'clock with a good book, or, they're like doing gardening or sourdough starters, and they're not so much bothered about going down drinking in, bars and nightclubbing. Or do they still want to do that? Because actually, there's a growing trend of day drinking, and people my age want to go out at 12, drink in the day, go to one of those like over 30s discos or discos for grown-ups, which is a very big market at the moment here in the UK, and go to some place that is a nightclub that opens at 5, closes at 10, get the last train home, in bed by midnight, have a good night's sleep, wake up, living your best life. And in fact, some of my friends are big party women, and we are in our 30s and our 40s, and we are just going for it. And that kind of flips the trend of Gen Z now that are like not drinking and don't go to the pub, and nightclubs are closing and having to remarket themselves in order to appeal to maybe my demographic, who are still pretty much interested in going out and living their best lives because we just want to have fun or something along those lines. Okay, so social media as well. Here I am on the social media platform. Hi, YouTubers. But I'm not on TikTok, and I won't go on TikTok because it seems it's too fast, it's too frenetic, and it's too diluted for me. I need some depth, and that's why I'm doing these sort of videos where I talk about a topic and I go into it in a little bit of depth and hopefully a little bit of intelligence. I mean, you can argue and say maybe not, but TikTok is a giant marketplace, isn't it? It's just selling stuff. It's QVC for Gen Z, as I think I've said, and it's not really, there's a lot of information on there and there's some really good stuff that comes out of it, but it just feels very and then Instagram's all about aesthetics and how things look. It's how, our style and like taking perfect shots and this idea of perfectionism. And I think it is messing up young people to some extent, isn't it? Like there's a lot of mental health. We've talked about this in a couple of other videos, and obviously it's going to be a common thread because these are the common threads of society. But, useful aesthetics and trends, everything's a bloody trend. Slow down. I don't want everything to be a trend. 1 minute it's avocado toast, which actually isn't. But, next thing, like pistachio seems to be the thing at the moment. And that is, again, linked into the next point that I'm going to make, which is capitalism and consumerism. What can we consume? We're selling stuff all the time. So as people get older, let's make them scared of getting older, and let's make loads of products that scare them and make them want to purchase them because they don't want to age. So we'll Botox or hyaluronic acid or, this skincare routine or this hair dye or this hair color because this will make you look younger. And yeah, that's kind of, everything's sold to us, or wear these, you'll look younger, or style yourself like this. And people do tend to want to look like they're not in the age they are. And that's a little bit sad, I suppose. Then there's like innovation bias, isn't there? I've talked about how like millennials often obviously have created a lot of things like Instagram and YouTube, like, it's kind of that, culture that or the first type of this innovation in tech kind of emerged from that sort of generation. But tech culture idolizes young geniuses, doesn't it? Let's go back to Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook. He was in university when that was made, and he established that, and obviously he's profited from it and is probably selling in data and all the little algorithms and things. And Silicon Valley startups being under 30, making you this competitive, brilliant savant in what you're doing. But actually, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are much older who've been doing just as many imaginative and innovative things, but we just don't kind of tell the story of that because it's not as interesting. We expect people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s to be quite capable and able to do things, whereas someone under the age of 30 is kind of glorified because, hey, they're under 30 and managing to do this. And perpetual novelty. Capitalism thrives on this idea, doesn't it? This idea of constant reinvention. I've just tapped into that with this idea of trends and things that are new. And like I said, low-rise jeans are coming back. Skinny jeans are coming back. Skinny jeans were out, but skinny jeans are coming back. But that's capitalism trying to sell a new idea. I think I'm getting to the point now where I'm probably, getting through the second or third version of stuff. Nothing's going to be new to me, and I'm actually developing my own sense of style and what's comfortable or appropriate or suits the kind of situation I'm in. And I'm all for a bit of period dressing, but yeah, I don't want to be trendy. I just want to be comfortable, but I actually want to look chic and elegant and appropriate for my age. I'm not going to be wearing things that maybe make me look older than I am or younger than I am because I want to look my age, and I'm okay with that. And I don't need to keep up with what the young people are doing because I'm going to kind of do it for myself and wear what I want to wear and like what I want to like. But fetishizing youth keeps consumers hungry for the next thing. It keeps them wanting the next trend, the next novelty. It wants to keep them cutting edge. But actually, should we just sod that off and make our own tastes and preferences the center of what we like? And as I've said, people that are distinctive and unique and know what they like tend to be far more interesting than people who are just following fads and trends, quite frankly. So, ageism and power dynamics, I have touched on this as well, hasn't I? And devaluing experience. Older, more experienced people tend to be expensive, and this is again where capitalism interjects, isn't it? Young people are cheaper. You don't have to pay them as much. Young people are malleable. You can mold them into what you want. Again, power structures and dynamics like this works for them, doesn't it? And then sometimes aging is linked to decline, isn't it? Like you're not as good, you're not as purposeful, you're not as effective. Personally, this isn't my experience, but this is a myth. This is something that is propagated within society, and this is, the message, one of the fundamental stories that keeps re-emerging. Workplace structures, again, tapping into this idea, favour young workers, as I've said, adaptable, cheaper, more in touch with emerging trends. So if you're in marketing, maybe you're going to chase the younger ideology rather than the older ideology. And this idea that you can control younger people through this aspirational lifestyle. Maybe as we get a bit older, we get a little bit more cynical. I think I might be there sometimes. My cynicism has grown massively over the last few years. But by glorifying youth, industries and institutions keep people striving to invest more time, more energy, more money into things, and to build this vision of the future and to work for it and to desire something from this hard work and effort. And I think as we get older, young people are still maybe building for this vision, whereas older people are a bit jaded by it and are more willing to make changes or to become anti-establishment or to fight against things or to stand up for what they believe in and be more actively kind of challenging or defiant about things that they don't agree with. I've certainly become this in my workplace. I will say where I don't agree with something. Not because I'm trying to be difficult or to cause conflict, because I just think sometimes it's an idea and it needs to be expressed. And I think maybe when you're younger, you don't feel as confident or comfortable as expressing your ideas in that way. And again, is this something that comes with age, and it links into this idea of power and the, structures within that. Another thing is actually that Western versus Eastern ideology. I think in Eastern society, aging is kind of revered a little bit more and a bit more respected, and people are taught to respect their elders. You can have multiple generations living in one home as well. I think this is more of an Eastern cultural ideology. And we may be in Eastern societies. I mean, feel free to contradict me if you are somebody from an Eastern part of the world. You have a different viewpoint, but you do revere the wisdom that old people bring and are respectful of their lived experience, and that's quite good. However, is this changing because of globalization? Is this changing because of the internet? Is this because there's a dominant hegemony of kind of Western ideas and values that are permeated because they're very much linked to capitalist ideas and values? I don't know. You can tell me that based on your own experiences, but it certainly is sad. And in Western culture, as I've said, novelty is prized, individuality and consumption are things that we all aspire to kind of put value into. Let's spend more, let's buy more, let's be more of this type of individual rather than that. And finally, isn't there a little bit of a paradox in this? Because you actually become more powerful, you become more knowledgeable, you become more self-assured, so self-reliant, more self-secure as you get older. And therefore, you're less malleable, less easy to adapt and change, which can also be bad things because we should always be willing to change, adapt, and be malleable, definitely. But actually, yeah, our society kind of wants us to be able to be easily controlled and influenced. And I think young people to some extent are more easily influenced because they don't have that depth of knowledge yet. That doesn't mean they're not going to become that, they're going to get there eventually. I don't think I knew a lot of things as a 19-year-old, but I certainly knew more at 29, I knew more at 39. And I'm sure I'll know a lot more at 49. So yeah, that's it. We learn and we grow and we shape. And we fetishise youth not just because of biology, but because the world and the society that we live in tells us to. And it has layered kind of messages on our economy, our aesthetic value, and then this deep anxiety around aging and the industries that are built on this predominant fear of aging, and that not representing older lived experiences the same way that we romanticize those younger lived experiences. So again, we're kind of the architects of our own design here. We are controlling the narrative, really, but we choose to keep perpetuating and pumping the same narrative instead of trying to change it or evolve it or make it a broader narrative and share those kind of stories and experiences. Okay then, so I'm going to wrap up there. I'm probably going to do a little response to this video. I'm not sure when I find the time, but we'll talk about kind of what the problems of fetishizing youth are and how we can overcome them, because that's what we want to do. And yeah, we idolize youth because biology tells us that it's fertile, and capitalism tells us it's profitable, and Instagram tells us that we're old by the time we're 30, and we are not old by the time we're 30. You're not old unless you think you're old, and you're never old, are you? You're only as old as you are, and you can only get older. So there you go. That's a bit of an inspirational message, isn't it? And it's because we tell ourselves the biggest lie of all. There's nothing wrong with being older. In fact, getting older is a privilege. Getting older is fun. Getting older is interesting. Getting older gives you different perspective. Like some of the things I think about that I used to think, I'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe I used to think that. And I really like the version of myself that I am now. And I'd like to think that the younger version of me would think, oh, she's all right. She's pretty cool. And I think the younger version of me was great, but there's a lot of things about her that I'm like, oh, thank God I'm not thinking or feeling the way that I used to. The knowledge and self-assurance that I'm getting as I get older is definitely something that I really enjoy, and hopefully anyone who's growing older can enjoy in the same journey that I'm on. And let's think about it. It's less about wrinkles and wallets, and it's more about enjoying our lives and not worrying about it. It's you put the value on the things that you put the value on, and I put the value on having fun, enjoying relationships with the people in my life that I care about, like my family and my friends, and getting pleasure out of the things that I get pleasure out of, like enjoying aspects of my job, enjoying aspects of nature, enjoying aspects of society, and kind of deconstructing it. Obviously, you can sense that I'm that type of person. And remember, getting older isn't the problem. Fearing getting older is the problem. And pretending that you're not getting older is the problem. So yeah, that's my little deep dive today. Feel free to add some comments and thoughts below. I'd love to hear what you think about this. And I'll catch up with you next time. Ta-ta for now.